I meant to say this like a little while ago. Do you guys know we started this at like the end of July? It's been like what? Maybe even June. No, we went for all of June and now we're into August. It was the end of June, I think we started this. I got to go back and check in a second. This is craziness. But it feels like time is just kind of flying. But you guys make it really easy. Glad to see the same normal smiling faces and names in the chat here this morning. Good morning, Cloud Dragon, Mischievous Dragon, Tracy. Also, did I already say Cloud Dragon? Well, say it again. What's up, Cloud Dragon? And Squirrel Dragon as well. The dragons have taken over the watch party. It's like you guys like to hang out and listen to people talk about politics and the state of our society every day. I mean, come on, bro. But I appreciate you still either way it goes. Jason Stanley just jumped in. Glad to see all you guys here. Yeah, I did start a couple of minutes early. The earliest I've started is like 10 to 15. It was trying to be 20. There's so many things to cover, not necessarily with so many different stories, but just so much packed into explaining what it is that's happening and how we're getting to the places that we are. So if you guys like what we're doing, please like, subscribe, share the stream with folks. And when you check out the videos that we put up afterwards of the discussions and topics that we talked about, try doing the same thing with those things as well too. Go ahead and share those to your friends and your family. Tell Randy, what was it, Randy? Old school TYTers know it. I've had so many things in my brain I can't even remember anything anymore. But anyways, now let me get my sound up here so you guys can really hear me. How about we go ahead and get this started? This had me a little incensed, so I'm trying to make sure I come in even here. Yesterday, we talked about one Benny Johnson, podcaster who was invited to sit in at the press briefing where Caroline Levitt pat him on his head and said, "Good job, Benny." He, I guess on that same day, broadcast his show from some White House podcasting room, and he went with the normal standard procedure of blatant and extreme racism for this MAGA party and their plans for this country. I want you guys to listen to what it is that he said and how he said it, because it's pretty much unmistakable at this point. I mean, it's been that way for a while.
President Trump is doing God's work by refederalizing D.C. By the way, D.C. was set up as a federal city. It's in the Constitution. It's how our founding fathers intended it. What happened to D.C., especially during the civil rights period, was that protesters that were bussed up here stayed here. The city was burned to the ground. This happened during massive riots throughout the 60s and 70s. Mass swaths of the city were torched and were never really rebuilt. And so what President Trump is doing is reasserting control of not only our nation's capital, but truly the seat of Western civilization.
Benny Johnson is talking about what DC used to be and the vision that MAGA wants it to be. The problem that he has that happened with DC is that people that he wouldn't specify, because we know who he's talking about, were bussed up to DC and they never left. And since then, they've been destroying his great capital that is the bastion of whiteness. And they had riots. Didn't explain what those riots were over, but it was definitely during the civil rights era. I wonder what the riots were about. It's about more equality. It's about freedom. It's about rights, the things that they're suppressing right now. It's why they're taking things back to where things used to be. So this is part of his pitch for what it is that he's happy Donald Trump is doing with DC, because that doesn't really have much to do with crime. It has to do with getting rid of folks. Here's more.
Washington, D.C. is a representation of the work of your forefathers and mine. It is, by every measure, a very beautiful city architecturally. It is a sacred city. It is a sovereign place with the monuments to great men and women who've sacrificed far more than you or I could ever dream for this country. It must be preserved because the peoples of Earth come here by the millions per year in order to witness the success or failures of our systems. And if you are a proud patriot and you love this country and you wish for it to be reflected honorably to the peoples of Earth, then Washington, D.C. must be swept clean.
Washington, D.C. must be swept clean. But you guys hear some more of those dog whistles that were not dog whistles at all. We hear them loud and clear. If you're a proud patriot that loves this country and want it reflected honorably, because his forefathers and mine, as he said, had this a certain way, and it's since been changed. Uh, that's him indicting the forefathers, the way that many people that point out how our forefathers, the folks who started this country, were slave owners, that they were completely discriminative, and they didn't consider other humans that they owned to be full human beings. So as people, as they call out bashing the forefathers, this is what he wants it to return to. He already pointed out that people were bust up during the civil rights era, which is something that they always said that there's equality in this country. Apparently, that's not what they want. Let's get very, very extremely explicit with what Benny Johnson is saying he wants happening in Washington, D.C., because he wants it to be seen honorably the way it was before all those civil rights started.
I believe entire neighborhoods probably need to be emptied, need to be bulldozed. I believe that there are places that are so crime ridden and so infested that you just need to, you're just going to have to crack down. You're going to have to do the job, and you're going to have to get the crime out of Washington. That's my personal experience. Don't believe the bullshit that you hear online from some reporters. Oh, crime's down in DC. Well, my infant nearly died in a drug fire after mass shootings. So no, DC is not safe. And I can tell you this as a matter of fact, it is one of the worst, most racist narco states and welfare states imaginable. In that neighborhood that I would walk every single day, racial epithets were screamed at us, rocks were thrown at us because we were white people. This city is a sunken place. It is an unsafe place. I mean, if that's what happens to me, imagine what happens to somebody who's visiting here from a foreign country, right? It's totally and wholly unsafe and a scar on the face of our country. And it must be healed. And President Trump is going about that heavy work.
I think it's pretty clear what we're saying here. He needs entire neighborhoods cleared and cleansed of the issue that's a plague on his clean white lily white city that was supposed to be what the forefathers first saw. What he's experienced is mass crime. Let's not forget, this is why they want people to forget the way that racial discrimination was implemented, the way that they posed people as dangerous, always crime ridden, and welfare states. He used all of the taglines. These are not dog whistles. What Benny Johnson is saying is there's too many black people in this city. We have to cleanse it of those black people because they're drug riddled, they're criminals, and they're here to kill you. And when anyone else comes from a foreign country and visits, they're going to get treated worse. Also, it's a racist narco state. And there's racial epithets that were screamed at white people. I thought racism didn't exist. I also thought that there's no color. We don't see color. There's no color seen in this country, but for some reason, it's the oppressed folks, the disenfranchised folks, the people whose rights are being taken away, the folks who are being stripped from any kind of history as this president sits in the White House right now. It's those people that are the problem. That's the scary part of America. His baby almost died in a fire. How much does Benny Johnson talk about black babies that are systematically murdered? How much does he talk about black women who are pregnant and about to have children, how they're discriminated against in our hospital systems and the way they're overlooked and they're not treated the same way? These are all documented proof of things that go down. We've seen it, we've heard it, but in order to have this fear state of having to cleanse DC of the plague, you have to flip reality on its head and say that the white folks are under attack, even though the white folks are running all this. That's what Benny Johnson is about. And that's why Benny Johnson was invited to the White House yesterday to continue to implement and make what he's saying normal. In case you guys forgot that this isn't just some podcaster on his network spewing racial shit. He was invited to the White House to make himself look like a normal person.
As a DC resident of 15 years, I lived on Capitol Hill. I witnessed so many muggings and so much theft. I lost track. I was carjacked. I have murders on my Ring camera and mass shootings. I witnessed a woman on my block get held up at gunpoint for $20, and my house was set ablaze in an arson with my infant child inside. And so to any reporter that says and lies that DC is a safe place to live and work, let me just say this. Thank you.
That's the normalization of Benny Johnson. And so a day or the same day, he goes and starts talking about all that. I don't want you to forget what else Benny Johnson is also about. Just a year ago, it's the beginning of September of 2024, there was that Department of Justice indictment that went out that talked about the people who were pushing pro-Russian propaganda to divide the country and to have these battles within our society increased. It's not like we never had them. This is a very it's a rich environment for these types of folks to come in and say the things that they're saying. And as he said it on podcast before Donald Trump got his ass back in power, it was just within their internet society teachings and interactions. But now that they've got power, they're bringing that to the forefront. Let me remind you guys of who these guys are and how Benny Johnson was actually a big part about that. This is details from this indictment that was put forward that showed how Russians were controlling people to say the types of things that Benny Johnson likes to say. In case you guys forgot, there was a media startup from reactionary luminaries. These are some of the folks in it: Tim Pool, Benny Johnson, Dave Rubin, Lauren Southern, and others secretly received funding from Russia, is what that federal indictment alleges. I got more. Again, September of last year. The Department of Justice charged 2 employees of Russia Today with violations of the Foreign Agents Registration Act, saying they participated in a $10 million scheme to create and distribute content to U.S. audiences with hidden Russian government messaging. The press release from the DOJ says that Russian state broadcaster RT orchestrated a massive scheme to influence the American public by secretly planting and financing a content creation company on U.S. soil. And that content creation company housed all those folks and had a name on top of it that didn't connectly to them. But you see all of these people with these tens of millions of followers online to spread all this disinformation and division within our society. You saw the names on the list. Here's more. The indictment claims the personalities on Tenet, that was the company, were not aware of the backgrounds and intentions of the 2 Russians, and that the funding for the company came through a Canadian shell company from a frontman named Edward Georgian, who didn't actually exist. Despite the fact that Google searches for that guy, Edward Georgian, did not return any hits, the 2 commentators went through with this deal, is what that indictment alleges as well. In it, however, they did note that the fake founder may come across as woke, which flagging a commitment to, quote, social justice found in his profile. But regardless of all that, they still went along with that deal. They went along with that deal because it was worth millions and millions of dollars to them. So as this whole thing blew up, you saw a couple of those names: Tim Pool, Benny Johnson. That same Benny Johnson who's now talking about cleansing Washington, D.C. of black people, because black people are a plague on this country because they're crime-ridden, they're drug-addled, and they're also just leeches on our society because they're welfare queens. That's what Benny Johnson's talking about. So in response to this is what he said at the time. A year ago, a media startup pitched my company to provide content as an independent contractor. Our lawyers negotiated a standard arm's length deal, which was later terminated. We are disturbed, by the allegations of today's indictment, which made clear that myself and other influencers were victims in this alleged scheme, and my lawyers will handle anyone who states or suggests otherwise. So, because you don't know that you're a sucker and an agent for Russians, you don't have to know what you're doing. You just have to know you're piggybacking the same types of things that they want said in this country that cause more division, hate, and violence. Which, as far as right now, in the middle of 2025, there's hate, division, and violence carried out by the people that you are supporting by going up in the White House and talking about how you had all these instances of crime happening on your Ring door cam, and then the same day going and talking about how we need to cleanse our city of American citizens because they're second class citizens that aren't the same lily white that we need to have running this country and being visible in this country as their rights continue to be taken away because he's openly and obviously against any civil rights, because that's where shit started getting bad, according to Benny Johnson. Let me show you some of the things that were in their campaign topics from that Russian sweep, and their fooling of these fools, and to start pitching that same stuff. Some of those campaign topics you'll see right here: encroaching universal poverty, record inflation, halting of economic growth, unaffordable prices for food and essential goods. These are the things that were being said during the campaign to make sure that people were on board with them, that now none of those things are being addressed. Here's more. I want you to run through these really fast because there's one last one that's very important here for what I'm going to show you next. Risk of job loss for white Americans. Think about the things that we heard from this administration in this campaign at the time. Privileges for people of color, perverts, and disabled. They're the people that are getting too much. Constant lies of the U.S. political party B, which in this case is the Democrats, administration about the real situation in the country. Threat of crime coming from people of color and immigrants, including new immigrants from Ukraine. Overspending on foreign policy and the expense of interests of at the expense of interests of white U.S. citizens. Constant lies to the voters by the Democrat Party in power. And last but not least, this is number 8 on the first part of that list. America is suffering a defeat despite, again, candidate B, which would be Joe Biden at the time, his efforts. We're being drawn into this war. Our guys will die in Ukraine. You guys remember the it continues now in a way, the push against defending and helping out Ukraine in this war where Russia is entering it. So you can see the interest that Russian operatives would have in using some trusted conservative influencers in this country to piggyback and say their things that they want said, so that there's a less interest in Americans supporting the kind of support we're doing there in Ukraine. Tomorrow, there's a meeting that Donald Trump has with Vladimir Putin that he's supposed to talk further about what it is that they're doing. I'm going to get to that in a second because that's a whole other story. But as you can see, those things were part of the list of things that these influencers that were infiltrated were supposed to be talking about. Here's one of those folks. It's not Benny Johnson. It's one of the other people that was named. And I want you guys to notice. I notice this sometimes when Charlie Kirk is speaking and when other folks are talking on these conservative outlets. They're reading what it is they're supposed to be saying. Now, you may say, oh, he wrote it down. He's reciting his thoughts. But it's pretty damn close to the things that they told you to talk about in the way that they want people to not trust the things that Russian agents and this approach on our citizens are not supposed to trust.
They know it. But I don't know that it matters anymore. This is psychotic. Ukraine is the enemy of this country. Ukraine is our enemy, being funded by the Democrats. I will stress this again. One of the greatest enemies of our nation right now is Ukraine. They are expanding this war. Now, don't get me wrong. I know you've got criminal elements of the U.S. government pushing them and guiding them and telling them what to do. Ukraine is now accused, a German warrant issued for blowing up the Nord Stream pipeline, triggering this conflict. Ukraine is the greatest threat to this nation and to the world. We should rescind all funding and financing, pull out all military support, and we should apologize to Russia. And they know it. But I don't know that it matters anymore. They know.
You keep seeing him look down and read. I don't know where the script came from, but I know it looks like a script. And it matches what it was that they were supposed to be doing. I'm just connecting those dots because of the way these things are supposed to be said. And if you're an unwitting character in this whole thing, all it shows is that you believe the same things that they want said more in this country. So they've seen this swath of people, these rabid racists that say things like this. I'm talking about back to Benny Johnson. Now, that was Tim Pool carrying that water for the Ukraine part of this propaganda campaign. But when it comes to Benny Johnson, I'm sure he believes that stuff. But it's really easy to be used with those beliefs to continue to divide the country by being offered millions of dollars to just do your same show that says all these things, but say it in a more targeted and a direct way. Last slide from this before we move on from this story. I have so much to get to today because this is from that indictment as well. Covert attempts to sow division and trick Americans into unwittingly consuming foreign propaganda represents attacks on our democracies, what the FBI Director Christopher Wray said at the time. There's reasons why they continue to lambast Christopher Wray's name. Today's actions show that as long as foreign adversaries like Russia keep engaging in hostile influence campaigns, they're going to keep running into the FBI. We will continue to do everything we can to expose the hidden hand of foreign adversaries like Russia and disrupt their efforts to meddle in our free and open society. The Russian government has long sought to sow discord and chaos in the United States throughout propaganda and foreign malign influence campaigns. As alleged, the covert operations by RT employees exploited our free and open press and targeted millions of Americans as unwitting victims of Russia's psychological warfare. So you got people believing all the lies that flow every day from this administration, from this MAGA party, and it's sowing that same division, hatred, and belief that there has to be this cleansing now of the wrong kind of people in this country. And as they were campaigning on it, it was the dirty immigrants. It was those damn trans folks. It was all these people that we already conditioned our society to hate. And as society was starting to see these other folks as humans, we got to reel that back because our power is lost when there's more freedom and there's more rights. That's why Benny Johnson brought up the civil rights, because that's a big hit to white power in this country that was founded on white power. It's absolutely undeniable. Was it founded on the rights of enslaved people? Was it founded on the rights of trans folks? Was it founded on the rights of the LGBTQ plus community? No, it was founded on the dominance and economic wins of white people on the backs of others. It's why we have the highest prison population. It's why they want to start jailing homeless folks. And why there's these concentration camps popping up in different parts of the country to continue to put undocumented folks in them, and also American citizens in them, and legal immigrants in those. There have to be the right kinds of immigrants, though. The ones that are lesser than these white supremacists. It's a fight that we're looking at. And if people don't want to believe it, it's going to be at your doorstep. Matter of fact, if you live in DC and you're the wrong color, it's already there. Okay, I just want to show you guys. And if you ever had that thought that these Black folks and these Latinos and these Asian folks and these indigenous folks are overreacting with the experiences that they've had in this country, this is what we've seen that has been hidden from other folks. And now it's right in front of you. Okay. Hey, ask some of your elders. I got my parents tell me about it. My aunts and uncles tell me about it. Older folks that lived here during those times tell me about it. They're seeing the same thing that they saw then. Trust. Let's move on to this president, since we're talking about Russians' influence on our country. This guy is number one on the on that list.
Will Russia face any consequences if Vladimir Putin does not agree to stop the war after your meeting on Friday?
Yes, they will. Yeah.
What will the consequences
there will be
be?
consequences.
Sanctions, tariffs?
There will be, I don't have to say, there will be very severe consequences. Yes.
And by consequences, the president of the United States means, I'm not sure if I should kiss your left or your right ass cheek. Which one would you like? Actually, if you prefer the right ass cheek, I'm going to kiss the left one. Those are the consequences apparently that Vladimir Putin's got to put up with if they don't have an end or a deal to end this war. I'm gonna go ahead and tell you why, because this was reported by Telegraph to talk about some of the things as Donald Trump is about to have that meeting with Vladimir Putin just tomorrow, what he's floating. Check this out. Donald Trump is preparing to offer Vladimir Putin access to rare earth minerals to incentivize him to end the war in Ukraine. Not too surprising, right? The U.S. president will arrive at the much anticipated meeting with the Russian counterpart on Friday, armed with a number of money-making opportunities for Putin. They will include opening up Alaska's natural resources to Moscow and lifting some of the American sanctions on Russia's aviation industry. Proposals include giving Putin access to the rare earth minerals in the Ukrainian territories currently occupied by Russia. Did you see that part? It was the third sentence. They will include opening up Alaska's natural resources to Moscow. Alaska, that state in the United States that he thought he was going to Russia when he said he's going up to Alaska to talk with him, and lifting some of those American sanctions on Russia's aviation industry. So he's opening up the United States, or he's going to potentially propose this if Vladimir Putin says, give me more, Alaska to Vladimir Putin, because That's America first, isn't it? The problem is he's always given us signs of what he said of giving up Ukraine's territory months and months ago.
Ukraine should cede territory to Russia?
Well, I'm going to let you know that after I have my first meeting. But a lot of that territory, when you look at what's happened to those, I mean, there are cities that there's not a building standing. It's a demolition site. There's not a building standing. So people can't go back to those cities. There's nothing there. It's just rubble. Just like when I knocked down a building in Manhattan, which is actually, this is worse, actually, because we do it step by step. This thing has just got demolished. And by the way, in those buildings are many people. Many people were in those buildings.
You notice his weave? He's asked a question whether or not he wants to give up Ukrainian territory, and that's his plan, is to give it away, since, you know, this country invaded this other sovereign country and occupied land. His plan was to give it away, but instead he decided to go and start talking about how many people are being killed, buildings being knocked down, and how he's a real estate guy. That's to distract your brain from just hearing him say, yeah, I think we should force Zelensky to give it away. And that was part of the fight that he and JD Vance had in the Oval Office when Zelensky showed up, and they had that big famous fight where they kicked him out of the White House because he wasn't on board with just giving away parts of his country. Here's more. Remember this?
Some people hear you say you're going to end the war in 24 hours,
Yeah.
and they worry that means President Putin is going to get to keep the territory he's unlawful.
I'd make a fair deal for everybody. Nope. I'd make
Doesn't mean that? Wouldn't be a win for Putin?
You know, that's something that could have been negotiated, because there were certain parts, Crimea and other parts of the country, that a lot of people expected could happen. You could have made a deal. So they could have made a deal where there's less territory right now than Russia's already taken, to be honest. And you could have made a deal where nobody was killed. They had a deal. They would have had a Ukraine country. Now nobody even knows if Ukraine is going to be totally taken over. I will say this. Something's going on, and it's not good for Ukraine.
You guys remember during the campaign, part of the sticking points of people that were against him on this plan was talking about how he used to give things away from Ukraine to Russia. That was his plan for 24 hours of ending this war. Except once Vladimir Putin heard that, he's like, I want more. If you're going to give stuff away, why would I leave early before all the free shit is still here? So that's been the plan. So now it's apparently part of the negotiations, as long as he says deal enough times. Part of the negotiation is also giving away parts of access to Alaska as well, because that's how he does deals with someone who has him by the sack. That's how he deals with them. He gives it away because Vladimir Putin said, oh, you're my friend. And he goes, did you guys know Vladimir Putin said that he's my friend? I'm going to give him more leeway. Bombs, killing, invasions. I'm not going to say that Russia actually invaded. You remember him and any member of his administration or folks who were part of his team would not say in testimonies and interviews and in press conference, would not say who invaded Ukraine. How did that war start? You guys remember that? Over and over and over again. They were muted on that. They were afraid to say it. It was a policy decision to not say Vladimir Putin's Russia invaded Ukraine because they can't piss off Vladimir Putin. So we'll see what happens in the meeting tomorrow. But the buildup has happened where there's been some instances where Donald Trump did say, I can't believe he keeps screwing me on this. I'm giving him everything. How does this work? Why does he keep wanting more? Fine. Okay, fine. I'll give you more. If you guys will remember, also part of the press conference yesterday, Caroline Leavitt was being asked about this upcoming meeting. They asked her about potential bilateral relations, because this is supposed to be just a closed-door meeting between Donald Trump and Vladimir Putin. But she didn't really want to answer it. I'm going to tell you why after you hear this again.
Thank you. The Kremlin is expressing interest that Friday's meeting will move beyond just terms to end the war into improving bilateral relations. There's talk over how they're interested in potentially restoring direct flights between Russia and the United States. Is President Trump open to those kind of peripheral conversations, or is this directly focused on ending the war in Ukraine?
I think this conversation on Friday is focused on ending the war in Ukraine as far as the president's perspective goes. Those conversations, I think the president is interested in having, but his main priority right now is ending this war and to stop the killing that has gone on for far too long.
Thank you. The Kremlin
She doesn't really want to answer when it comes to those bilateral relations. Just those two people, this is excludes anything with Ukraine, but Trump would hope to make those decisions about Ukraine as well. Let me give you the last quote from this Telegraph article that's talking about some of the things that they're looking to do here, because here's more of the giveaways. Other incentives include lifting export bans on parts and equipment needed to service Russian planes, swaths of which have fallen into disrepair. They have some issues going on. Western countries have restricted Moscow's access to crucial spare components and other equipment since its full-scale invasion of Ukraine back in 2022, forcing airlines and the military to cannibalize old aircraft for replacement parts. Once they got eye-stopped from the rest of the world, they had issues with continuing this invasion and this potential takeover of more land that Donald Trump just said he wants to give to Russia. This is part of the incentive of this bilateral agreement potentially. Now, here's more. Nearly 30% of Russia's Western-made planes cut off for maintenance could be grounded within the next 5 years, is what the head of Rostak, Russia's state-owned defense conglomerate, said. Lifting sanctions on Russian aircraft could prove lucrative for the American manufacturer Boeing. With the fleet of more than 700 planes dominated by Airbus and Boeing, Russian airlines could return to the American suppliers, could return to the American suppliers for critical parts and maintenance. That might be some of the bilateral discussions that they're having as they're talking about ending the war. Russia's in trouble with their planes. They got old planes because they're eye-stopped from the rest of the world, because this other thing that Donald Trump doesn't understand, this is exhibited by his tariff policy. They need the rest of the world for parts, exports, imports. They have things that people can buy. They have things that they want to buy. But Donald Trump may be willing to be a part of this because Boeing could benefit from it. Because not only is this fascism, but it's also run by oligarchs. The rich people are the reasons why we make the decisions we make on national and international decisions. Maybe that's why he's going behind closed doors. Maybe that's why he's potentially going to offer access to Alaska. And maybe that's also why, after people are coming down on him for this, he was complaining on Truth Social. You guys remember that post yesterday? Complaining about the unfair narratives and treatments that media is throwing my way. He's mad because if you expose any of the truth, he gets pissed about it because he doesn't even know how to hide it. It's blatant. He's a weakling. I probably should play it. Remember in Helsinki when it was proven by our intelligence agencies that Russian influence was trying to influence our elections, and it made all the sense in the world? That is until Vladimir Putin had a meeting with Donald Trump privately and told him, no, I didn't. And when we get out here in front of these cameras, you're going to say, no, I didn't. And Donald Trump said, I don't care what my intelligence said. He didn't, because he said it very powerfully and strong. What reason do we have to trust and believe anything this guy has to say has any kind of a benefit to this country? What has he done for this country that's benefited it? I mean, I'm talking about the people, not the oligarchs and all the other folks who influence him. I'm talking about the people. Because, right now, as far as some tariff relief, what he's looking to benefit the people is offering $500 checks while he takes away everything else. I'm just saying, bro. Maybe we should have made sure that we listened to his former chief of staff when he called him a fascist, and we said that was too rude and mean to do. Just maybe. Let's go on to one other story, you guys. I also mentioned a little bit this guy yesterday, but there's more to it, man. As soon as the show was over yesterday, I looked up and I said, damn, this too? EJ, what's this guy's name? EJ Antoni. EJ Antoni is supposed to be the new commissioner of the Bureau of Labor Statistics after Donald Trump fired the former bureau commissioner of that bureau because bad job numbers came out because Donald Trump policies and his economy has produced bad job numbers. So I want you guys to take a look at who this guy is outside of what we already heard from being a part of the Heritage Foundation and the authors of Project 2025 that's implemented all these things in the country. Let's take a way back time machine to January 6th of 2021. See if you can spot this guy that's in the crowd.
USA! 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 USA!
That man you saw making his way through the crowd of January 6th rioters and traitors was EJ Antoni, the guy who's been nominated to be head of the Bureau of Labor Statistics, the same guy who also said he wants to suspend jobs reports from the Bureau of Labor Statistics because Donald Trump's job numbers sucked. So since then, we're discovering that he was a part of the January 6th crowd. Crazy. He walked away after there was a bit of a smoke screen there going on in the back. I think there was some tear gas, something where it came from, and he retreated. He retreated right before this happened.
We fight back because we have back. You can't let
If only Donald Trump had sent in the National Guard and federalized the police force on that very violent day in that same city of Washington, D.C., that I heard is only violent because of minorities. No, those were Donald Trump's MAGA foot soldiers invading the Capitol because he's a loser. He lost that day, and they don't know how to lose. But still, EJ Antoni retreated right before that, so he had nothing to really do with the actual invading into the White House. As a matter of fact, NBC News was reporting on it, and they got a couple of quotes about what some of the response from this revelation. When reached by NBC News on Tuesday, Antoni declined to comment. A White House official said Wednesday that Antoni was in Washington on January 6th for in-person meetings with his then employer at an office blocks away from the Capitol, and that he did not cross any barricades or participate in any demonstrations. The footage does not show Antoni crossing barricades or demonstrating. I mean, he didn't cross any barricades. I feel like in the middle of a crowd that's chanting "F you" and we're going to take this back, and Donald Trump didn't lose and hang Mike Pence. I mean, I guess I didn't see him actually saying that, but he's in the crowd of demonstrators. And if you see folks in the streets, say like in what Benny Johnson hated being the civil rights era, they didn't say, "Did you say F you?" or "Did you say F you?" or did they go and attack everybody? Still, he wasn't demonstrating. And yeah, he didn't cross the barriers because I think some tear gas was pluming in the air and the guy ran away because he's a little bitch. I mean, fine. I mean, whatever. What kind of protester are you? What kind of insurrection? What kind of true patriot are you if you run away? More. These pictures, quote, "These pictures show EJ Antoni, a bystander to the events of January 6th. He was just a bystander, observing and then leaving the capital areas, what that White House spokesperson Taylor Rogers said in an emailed statement. Quote, EJ was in town for meetings, and it's wrong and defamatory to suggest EJ engaged in anything inappropriate or illegal. Cool. Fine. I just know about these laws sometimes that if you're in the middle of a bunch of folks who are committing crimes, they kind of sweep up everybody and say you shouldn't have been part of inciting these riots and these crimes as people invaded the Capitol. Again, I'm not asking for the dude to be arrested and sent off. Oh, I'm sorry, to then be pardoned by Donald Trump because he said all January 6th people who did invade, who did attack police officers, who did harm people, who did threaten to kill lawmakers, that all those people were patriots and should be freed, and he's going to give them preferential treatment. How many January 6ers are in the Trump administration? How many January 6ers have been hired then by other MAGA folks throughout the country simply because they were a part of being that traitorous group that was trying to overturn an election that Donald Trump lost? I feel like I saw MAGA flags and stuff there. So when this guy decides to work for them after being rewarded for being a part of this whole thing and also being part of the organization that authored Project 2025, that's part of this entire plan to do what it is that they're doing, I feel like it's a reward for being a traitor to the country. That's just how I feel. So one last party, just the back end of this NBC report when they're talking about his nomination, how it may shake down.
The president announced a little bit ago that he's going to nominate economist E.J. Antony from the Heritage Foundation to lead the Bureau of Labor Statistics. Now, this comes after Donald Trump fired the last BLS commissioner earlier this month after the latest data showed that the
Mhm. At the back end, they say he's had to be confirmed by the Senate. So he's just been nominated. He has to be confirmed by the Senate. The Senate, of course, we know that Congress is controlled by Republicans. I just want to give you guys a quote from someone else that was talking about confirmations about someone else. And I only want to point out because I'm curious as if they're going to go down a similar route here with EJ Antony, which we've now seen was a part of the January 6th demonstrations there. Didn't invade the Capitol, didn't run past police barricades. He was out there. More from NBC. While Republicans control the chamber, January 6th has caused issues for Trump nominees in the past. Trump withdrew his nomination of Ed Martin to take over the U.S. Attorney's Office for the District of Columbia. That's after Senator Tom Tillis, Republican from North Carolina, indicated that Martin's past support for January 6 participants would be a deal breaker. I wonder what Tom Tillis is going to do now. I wonder what the rest of the Republicans in the Senate are going to do, is they have to confirm this guy to be the head of the Bureau of Labor Statistics. That is a position where he said he's going to eliminate some of their work because Donald Trump told him to. I wonder if his associations with January 6th and all those other insurrectionists, if that's going to be something that hinders his confirmation process. It just might be. It might be another case of what happened to Ed Martin. It's just that once Ed Martin was gone, he put in Janine Pirro. And we know what she did yesterday. Made an absolute fool of herself. Do you think if someone before the election said Donald Trump is going to pardon January 6ers, Donald Trump is going to eliminate job numbers and then replace them with the January 6er, do you think they would have called these people having Trump derangement syndrome? Or do you think they would have said, yeah, of course he's going to do that. That's no big deal. Last part here, guys. I got a little bit of time left. This literally just popped up. Hold on. I'm about to start in a second. I just want to see what you guys are talking about. Oh, it's a lot talking. I'm gonna get here in a second. So anyways, if you guys are enjoying it again, I want to make sure you guys realize these are all going up on the watch list later. We're gonna put these together in the stories in the sections that they are, so you can see these and share these and let folks know what was on my mind today and potentially what some of the discussions that maybe other folks aren't having. Let's go to this last story here. Since we're already talking about Trump destroying the country, the main aspect of this, outside of the white supremacy thing that we started this show off with, is control over so many people's money, the siphoning of our resources so that more people are desperate. It's not looking so good as far as inflation numbers go. Now, there's a lot of economic speak here, but just pay attention and we'll see what this is looking like. Here's Maria Bartiromo on Fox Business talking about the dire situation that suddenly popped up this morning that no one could have seen coming.
Breaking news right now and a spike in the producer price level of inflation. Take a look. Markets are selling off here because the July PPI came in up 0.9%, worse than the estimated up 0.2%. This is the headline number. It was expected up 0.2, came up 0.9%. Year over year, it is up 3.3% versus an estimate of up 2.5%. Now, when you look at core, it's also troubling because in the core PPI, it was up 0.9% versus an estimate of 0.2%. Year over year, the core up 3.7%, also higher than the estimated expectation, which was up 2.9%. These numbers have caused markets to drop. The Dow Industrial is down 105, the Nasdaq down 71, and the S&P 500 lower by 19. We want to take a look at producer prices with the Transportation Secretary. Sean Duffy will be here to talk about other things like the modernization of the FAA, as well as the investment in space. But we're going to start off with getting his expectation and reaction to a spike in producer prices. We'll be right back.
There's a spike in producer prices. Odd how that works. It's weird how Trump's tariff policies are affecting so many things that they said it wouldn't affect. It's also weird that core inflation is also on the rise at levels that they wouldn't have anticipated and expected. Weird how that works. Now, by the way, I'm no economist. I didn't study this stuff. I just listened to the people who did. Just pay attention. Like, you don't have to be an expert in these fields to listen to people who are experts in these fields to tell you how things work. And just listen. I don't even absorb it all. Many times I'm like, oh, wait, how does that work again? And I go back and I listen again. So you don't have to be I don't know everything I'm talking about with this, but I do know the people that do know what they're talking about are saying what can happen when we charge more people to produce things in this country who, of course, don't want to spend more money on the things that they're producing and will pass those costs on down to American consumers. You can also look at history and see how this has happened before. But anyway, let's continue on, because since we're listening, and if we're not fully sure what it is that we're all talking about, this is also talked about on CNN, and it was detailed even more about what it is that's happening. So if it was confusing, here's more.
Breaking just a few moments ago, key new data showing wholesale inflation heated up last month. That's a potential sign for the prices consumers may see on store shelves in the months ahead. Let's bring in CNN's Vanessa Yurkevich, who has been tracking all of this. What are the headlines here, Vanessa?
Yeah, this report just out showing that the prices that businesses pay has heated up. So you're looking at a year-over-year change of 3.3%. The estimate was an acceleration to 2.9%. So obviously above that. And then on the monthly basis, the estimate, what people expected was 0.2%. That's coming in at 0.9%. Wow. So quite a bit higher than what was expected. We are seeing increases both on the goods and services side. So the products and then the services like airfares or hotels, all of those categories on the rise. And you can see that uptick just right there in the month of July, spiking up after kind of a volatile recovery after those pandemic highs. Key things to look at in goods. We saw the price of food, the price that businesses are paying for food, up 1.4%. And look at this. This is interesting. Fresh and dry fruits and vegetables, kind of a category that is interesting to look at because we import a lot of vegetables, but not from countries that are heavily tariffed. So there's something else going on, but this accounted for a quarter of the increase of all goods. This could be because of labor issues with immigration. It could be weather. It could be transportation costs, which also rose in the month of July. And then on the services category, you saw transportation and warehousing really increasing there. Trade services, these are the margins that businesses take in. Those actually grew. And that is because maybe they're passing more of their costs down to the consumer. And then finally, in terms of travel and accommodations, on the rise again. So you're seeing hotels up 3.1%. But if you see there, look at that dramatic increase increase from the month of June,
Yeah.
when we saw levels that really we haven't seen in a while, and July now indicating a huge spike. The reason we look at this report in particular, Jessica, is because ultimately businesses will have to make a decision. Do they pass this down to the consumer?
Right.
Clearly, they're paying more, and does that end up with all of us?
And
I feel like they said it kind of clearly. So anytime the producers who are making this stuff have higher costs, they either take it or they pass it on, and prices go up for consumers. So as things like the tariffs are causing their prices to go up, their costs of creating whatever it is they're creating or growing in this case, speaking specifically about the fruits and the dry fruits and vegetables, if those go up, it goes up for everyone else too. This is what we've been talking about since April 2nd, when this guy brought out that billboard or the bulletin board and had all of these higher costs that he said other countries are going to pay. So as we heard small businesses say, yo, I can't afford this. And then large businesses say, yo, our prices, I mean, our losses are increasing. This is crazy. And then they said, no, it's not. No, it's not. That's been their only answer. No, it's not. It's not going to. Has it happened yet? Just because something doesn't happen the next day, because, there's all kinds of other factors in place. Just because it doesn't happen doesn't mean that this isn't the setup to make it happen. I want to focus one more time on the thing that they point out with the fruits and vegetables, because it's not just tariffs. It's also, again, as people said when he was proposing this mass deportation plan, folks that work in these industries, as you get rid of employees, what you do is you cause them to not be able to do the same product and the same output that they normally do. And when that happens, they lose, or they don't have the same amount coming out, and prices go up, because people who make this stuff, people in business, they want to keep making the amount of money that they're making, if not more. So it's not just tariffs. It's this guy's entire policies. And trust me, they know this. They want Americans in this bad situation, because at the end of the day, it's about money and it's about authoritarianism. He needs more control, so he needs more people desperate. As people are desperate, crime happens more. And as you can see, they're now focusing on whatever kind of crime they can manufacture. So they're calling everybody criminals just to get to the point where they are now, where things are getting destroyed. But again, I want to show you guys what Caroline Levitt said yesterday when asked about the problems with small businesses dealing with things like this. See if you hear her give an answer that makes any sense.
Go ahead.
Yeah, two questions on the economy. So first, we've had small businesses tell us that it's not foreign exporters who are eating the tariffs, it's them. And they've held off on raising prices, but soon they're going to have to raise prices. What is the White House's message to them?
The White House's message to our small business owners across the country is you have never had a better ally or friend or supporter in this White House than President Donald Trump, who is a businessman himself, who understands your concerns and who wants to restore wealth back to our country through the powerful use of tariffs. And that's what he's focused on doing, while simultaneously driving down costs. You have to remember, we are 6 months into this administration, and we had a president who had no business experience, had no idea what he was doing, and who funneled billions of wasteful spending dollars into our economy, which created the worst inflation crisis in a generation.
The answer to small businesses saying that their prices and their ability to be in business going up is, my message to small business is that they never had a better friend than Donald Trump. Just like his message to people who see gas prices going up 60 cents a gallon is, gas prices are down. Just like to people who said they're seeing their prices go up in just their groceries. No, you're not. It's actually going down. Just like people who point out that Donald Trump's approval rating is cratering. It's like, no, it's not. It's at 98%. It's really easy to just make shit up, but it actually means something when those results start kicking in. And those results are kicking in. But what's weird, I want to point out a couple more clips here from these guys on CNBC. Because as they're talking about, this is about big businesses now on CNBC they're talking about. There's this curious problem that's going on where the consumer prices aren't skyrocketing at the rate that they expected. And as I pointed out before, there's all kinds of things that these people do, seeing how Trump's tariffs and his economic agendas are kicking in, and how it's not really hitting them yet because they're trying to give some buffers to keep it from happening as fast as it could. So he's trying to figure out how these big businesses continue to claim that they're losing all this money, but it's not passed on as quickly as he expected. Here's him wondering why. And I'm going to give you the answer afterwards.
There's an anomaly in the data here from what I thought was going to happen. I thought what was going to happen was this area called trade services, it's a measure of profit margins, would squeeze and actually exert downward pressure on wholesale prices. I think that was an expectation across the street. But these are big numbers. Trade of private capital up 4.5%. Trade of personal consumption goods, what the margins that they're making, all of them up big. And I don't quite understand why the government is saying that profit margins increased when we're not seeing the essentially a lot of inflation in the consumer prices, but we're seeing prices higher on the wholesale prices. That should compress margins. And we've had a whole bunch of companies come on and say, we're taking big hits because of these tariffs. So this number should be going the other way. I'm not sure what's happening here, but Rick has also reported, and it's worth saying, even if you take these trade services out, the PPI was hot anyway, but this should have exerted some downward pressure, and it didn't.
It didn't. Profit margins are not what he thought they would be, because these big businesses are reporting something that's not coming through on the way that it's supposed to. This last guest on that spoke right after he mentioned it. Her name is Kitty Richards. She explained what it is that these big businesses have so much control. What is they're doing to make sure their profit margins stay where it is they would like for them to be, and how that's going to really affect us later.
I actually want to focus on what we were just talking about, this difference between the CPI, which is only starting to warm up, and the producer price index, which just came in very hot. And part of what's going on there is that there is a bit of a timing mismatch between when consumer prices rise and when producer prices rise. So I think that the Fed is going to look at this and that CPE release that's going to come later in the month and say, ooh, we're not really sure what's going on, but it looks like there are going to be price hikes coming down the pike. I'm actually not surprised that we didn't see compression of corporate profits. That's something that's characterized the inflationary period since the beginning of the pandemic, that corporations are actually able to protect their profit margins and actually even increase their profit margins at times using inflation and uncertainty as cover for price hikes, even if their costs aren't going up. And so one of the things we're going to be looking for in the CPI as consumer prices are starting to rise is, are corporations actually taking hits, or are they able to use this moment of supply constraint created by tariffs and uncertainty created by the Trump administration to pass on higher prices even above their increased costs?
It's kind of like these folks in positions of power in these economic powerhouses that control all this stuff, these huge corporations. They manipulate the system even further for the consumers because they control it. So you think they don't know how this works? You think they can't use the numbers and the issues of inflation and increased producer prices and all that stuff to then make even more money? So then later, people in the White House and Scott Bessent can be like, the prices of, look, inflation's only raised a certain amount much of the time. And it's gonna get worse because these corporations are not going to take hits that they don't want to take. I'm just saying. But will they start building all of these plants in America? And will they pop up in 24 hours the way Donald Trump said they would? Whatever. I know. Actually, the reason I saved that story for last is because it's a lot of economic talk. And honestly, you guys may have understood. I don't understand it all that well either. But I am listening to people who do. There's just a couple aspects of it. The folks making the money, and then we have to pay for all the stuff that they make. Anyways, thanks you guys. just give a full broad scope of what's going on with our government. And I want to keep reminding you, all the folks with Trump derangement syndrome, from economists, to folks in positions of like, democratic societies where you got mayors leading races or community leaders and all that stuff that pointed out the things that are going to happen to our society. All those things are happening. All those bad things are happening. So anyways, glad you guys are here. Go tell John over at the Damage Report I say hey, and we'll catch you guys on a Friday. Hopefully we have some decent news, but tomorrow, don't forget, tomorrow is that meeting that Vladimir Putin is supposed to have with Donald Trump about ending this war and the giveaways that he apparently is going to give away. If anybody does understand this so much better, because maybe I screwed that whole economic thing up, go ahead, shoot me a message. You guys can find me. Go say hey as well, and let me know what you think. Good to see you guys. What's up, Bubba Franks? What's up, Abby? Hasn't said hi yet. Woozy. I'll see you guys in a second. Grumpy Cat, I'll see you guys over in a second. I'm gonna go do my raid of TDR right before I know everyone and then take off again. But we'll see you guys tomorrow. See you later, Ma. I'm not sure if she was even here today. We'll catch you guys.